Well, a very warm welcome, well we are by a fireplace, to Happy Times and Places, in which I, Toby Hadoke, get a special guest to choose a Doctor Who story and to, in secret, nominate their favourite things about it. I have to then watch, commentate along, and try to guess what those favourite things are.
Hey, my name's Kathryn Mather. I am a stand-up comedian, and I'm delighted to be doing this podcast with Toby. So my choice of Doctor Who episode is The Girl in the Fireplace, classic David Tennant Doctor Who. I love it. It's one of my favourites. It's got everything, hasn't it? It's got the past, it's got the future, and I suppose the present as well.
Well, welcome everybody to Happy Times and Places. A rare foray into New Who. I'd very much like to do more, but it seems to me that a great many of my friends are ancient people who like old things, yeah, I think that might be it. I think there's also, I don't know, I think perhaps I'm drawn to, when I choose which ones to do the ones that I've been studying all my life. And of course I've had less time to study the new series because it's newer, and because when they were on, I wasn't an aimless youth who could just soak in information about Doctor Who. So with the old Who's, I can fall back on a fact. I can tell you if, the second guard once went to a Jerry and the Pacemakers concert, whereas with these, not so much. So I'm going to have to find another way to fill the time. But I'm delighted that Kathryn has come on board. Kathryn is a fine comic, and I'm glad she's chosen an episode that I quite liked at the time, and then quickly, I'm talking first viewing, and then quickly became an absolute favourite, because I actually thought, when I first thought of this, I actually only got to like it a lot much later, but no, because it was by the end of the season that I was pretty much of the opinion that there'd been a very rare thing for me of three. I don't give 10 out of 10 very often. 3 10 out of 10 stories in a row with Tooth and Claw, School Reunion, and Girl in the Fireplace. I think it's as good a run as Doctor Who has ever had. So with that in mind, I'm not going to find it too difficult to have good things to say about this episode, even though on the surface it's not an episode that necessarily contains all of the things I like, or maybe even contains a couple of things that I would think wouldn't have floated my boat. But anyway, let's discuss that as we go through, and we'll find out at the end what Kathryn's favourite things are. I have to choose my favourite things, and I am on BBC iPlayer. Other ways of digesting these shows are available. I actually have those ways as well, but this is the easiest one for me, and I'm going to press select or play or whatever it is in 3, 2, 1. I remember, just as this is loading up, I think there's I remember Stephen Moffat. I think that's a great opening shot. What a beautiful building. And we'd seen some of this on trailers. It's a great start, isn't it? And I love Doctor Who in period costume, and the BBC does this sort of stuff so well. Stephen Moffat begged us not to read the Radio Times preview because it said it gives something away. And I don't know if it gives away the horse coming through the mirror, which they'd alluded to in Doctor Who magazine, saying a thing and a thing that was suddenly they weren't able to do it and he had to do a rewrite. Can't imagine it without that. Or I don't know if Alison Graham, in her infinite wisdom, had said, it's set on the USS Madame de Pompadour. I don't know why. But either way, we were told not to read the Radio Times preview, so I duly didn't. And then I don't know if I went back and checked what it is it had given away. It's a great opening, because you go, okay, how's the Doctor involved? But we start off under attack. And of course, in true Stephen Moffat style, the story isn't going to be linear, so we're now going to go back and build up to that moment, which I like the use of in this. I'm not over keen on too much time travel back and forth. I think it gets a little tricksy and sometimes dilutes the drama, but I think it works really nicely here. And as I say, I think the way that Moffat puts these episodes together are so imaginative, such a clever use of Doctor Who's format. And of course, Mickey is on board the TARDIS now. And yeah, you sort of I sort of forget that this is on a spaceship because I think of it as being the story with Madame de Pompadour, but of course that's the Great Wheeze. It's an absolute fusion of the futuristic and the past, and those brilliant aliens. But this is such a good the Dagmar cluster. I wonder if the rival pub in EastEnders was called the Dagmar. So yeah, this was off the back of I think I'd thought School Reunion was going to be sort of K9 and Company again. Do you know what I mean? And I just thought it was really predictable, the idea that you'd bring back an old companion, and I was so self-loathing. I didn't want Doctor Who to do that. But of course, School Reunion I absolutely loved, and I will eulogise that when I get the chance to for this. Somebody has claimed it, but hasn't actually recorded their contribution. Yes, and I'm glad that with Kathryn we have a female contributor, and some listeners may go, it's not very diverse contributors that Toby has. There should be more women. I've asked, I think, as many women as men, and many of those women have agreed, but have still not recorded their thing. They've kept me waiting. So whether that says something about the women, or me, I don't know. But the fact is, I have asked a great number of women, but I've had more luck with ancient old white men. So I don't know why. But this is a story, though, actually, interestingly, that I have in the past shown to women in order to show them how good Doctor Who is. I remember I saw a girl very briefly, and I don't know why did I show her Doctor Who. I brought Doctor Who with me. She must have said, we should watch one or something. I don't think I turned up, you know what I mean, with a bottle of wine, packet of rubber johnnies, and a Doctor Who DVD. I mean, I could have done, but I don't think I had those moves. But I remember showing this to a girl and her really loving it, and because it's very. I didn't want to say magic door. He's great at all of that sort of stuff. Was it that line in Blink? It bings when there's stuff. And novel way of dealing with the TARDIS translation, which is very handy because it answers those questions. And you know, this is Moffat to a T. Actually, it's, you know, there's a doll's house there. It's a child in bed. This is, to me, Doctor Who. But it's Doctor Who very cleverly being Doctor Who on screen. What it was also to me as a child. That's a beautiful shot. What it was to me as a child. You know, as childhood of dark nights. I remember I lived in an old house in the country. And you know, when the wind rattled outside, you know, trees bashed against the window, and I would sleep with my duvet wrapped around my neck, because then at least when the vampires came to bite me, I'd feel the duvet being tugged, so at least I'd be able to, I don't know what I imagined I'd be able to do. But night terrors, and we have a bit, don't we, where something's under the bed or he's under the bed. And Moffat, you know, really taps into all of this it's a running through a lot of his Doctor Who is taking imagery or something that we kind of know is scary, but like a crack in the wall, I used to stare at cracks in the walls in bedroom ceilings, and to get those things that are sort of always there lurking, that we sort of know about and acknowledge subconsciously, and going, yeah, but just take a look again. A statue, a shadow, a crack in the wall, the idea of something under the bed. It's digging into not only primal but childhood things. Yeah, it is. It's something under the bed, isn't it? There's something under the bed, which I think, which is such it's brilliant. Such, because it's not only a scary moment, a thing grabbing you, but it's something under the bed. That is it's not a cliche from childhood, but it's a sort of programmed fear. And the Doctor, as the Doctor did, I mean, although the Doctor was the purveyor of the things that maybe frightened us as kids, but the Doctor also made the monsters go away, even though he brought them with him, which we tend to forget. And and of course this sets up the question, which isn't answered right until the end, unless you've read Alison Graham. I don't know if she gave away the Madame de Pompadour bit. You are incomplete. Yeah, and so the plotting of this is brilliant. It all fits together like a jigsaw, like clockwork. These are great. I love the monsters, because they're beautiful, they're scary. They've got the sort of blank face thing. They've got the similar sort of appeal of the Robots of Death, in that they're a marvellous design, but they're impassive. But also they speak to the period as well. So again, they work on, I think, every level. And it's always nice to have is that a fire extinguisher? Great at all of those sorts of take the cliches and have fun with them. And he's so good at one-liners. And these are, I love that design inside, the clockwork. And get the glasses out. Love it. How he's not been the Doctor long, has he? This is his fifth episode, yeah. And the monster's gone. But this really, I mean, season 1 had been good, and Eccleston was great. Marigold's telling us it's funny. I like Marigold's music, but I occasionally think that we're being a bit quirky now is just a little. But I suppose the scenes would be empty without the music. But I do occasionally think that this is funny, it's sometimes a little bit signposted. But that said, I could listen to Marigold's music all day, and I think it really. I think you do need to fill Doctor Who with music. I'm not a resistor of the music. I sometimes think it's too loud in the mix, but I like Doctor Who. I've always liked Doctor Who. I was listening to Doctor Who incidental music today as I walked around the park. I was listening to the Warriors of the Deep suite. Oh my goodness, I really am unsalvageable. Goodness, how good? Yes, so it's established it's the same person as the girl that he saw before. So we're doing a bit of visiting somebody in different time periods, and. I think one of the reasons I took a slight step back from this when I watched it initially is because I suspected Moffat was gonna have a kiss or something a bit sexy going on, and I am resistant to the Doctor having a love affair. I still don't quite know why that is. I don't think it's good enough to say, well, it did perfectly well without having one for 26 years. Why does it need to do one now? But, and I do sometimes think Moffat chucks that stuff in just to annoy people, like calling an episode The Pilot when you've got an episode called The Pilot. Missy doing a thing where she says, it's actually called Doctor Who. And, I do appreciate that annoying fans is amusing, but I also don't like being annoyed. So I can see both sides of that. But I'd enjoyed the TV movie, but I hadn't seen the need for the kiss. Although actually the kiss ended up not being too bad. The world didn't end. I mean, it nearly did, but he got a beryllium atomic clock. And I've just snogged Madame Pompadour. It's a bit, it's deliberately sort of childish. But it just meant that I don't know, as I say, I've been reluctant about, the horse on the spaceship. Absolutely brilliant. As I say, I'm not comfortable with why I don't want Doctor Who having hanky-panky. And of course, this is a great piece of plot. What's going on? Why have they got eyes in the equipment? That is all explained. Very nice. And again, the fact that this is slightly rompy is explained by the music going dimpy 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 dimpy. I'm trying to articulate. I think because I was not an active trouser merchant as a youth. Girls were my friends rather than my lovers. I sort of had that with the Doctor, who was sort of chaste. And the fact that stuff didn't even enter the Doctor's sphere of reference, I found quite comforting. And yes, I knew he'd got a granddaughter, so he's got it in the back of, so that sort of thing can have happened if we want it to, but it's not the thrust of the stories. And, with any long-running series like soap operas and things, it would sort of test your patience slightly when people got together who you'd always wanted to get together, but then you'd know if they stayed in it for any period of time, then to get the drama going, they'd have to break up, and that would spoil the getting together. And actually for Doctor Who to absent itself from all of that. Angel Coulby is an excellent actress. Very small part in this, and has gone on to have a good career, and you can sort of see why. She's very good. She'd been in an episode of Hustle in which she'd been really memorable, I think, as a secretary, and I remember seeing her in that and going, oh, she's really good. Oh, and she's the one, and I can't remember which came first, this or that. But she marked herself out, and again, it's another testament to Andy Pryor, I think, seeming to know who's going to go on to have a good career, or maybe it's just we have lots of good actors in this country, and it's inevitable that many of them will pass through Doctor Who. We only notice the ones that do, because there are plenty that didn't, who've gone on to do good things, but we don't associate with them to Doctor Who because they never got to be in Doctor Who. But there's also a cut scene with the Master of the Horse, wasn't there? And the actor was the dad of Mally Harris, who's in Boomtown, but he ends up not being in it. And you sort of think, does he still sit there going, oh, they cut me out, but they promised they'd get me back in, because they always do when things like that happen. So sorry it's not worked out this time, but we'll definitely get you back in. And he still hasn't been back in. I feel sorry for Fitch in Bad Wolf, because in the commentary they go, oh, she's really good, Karen Winchester, and she is really good, and they say, oh, we must get her back and give her something. She might have been watching that at home going, oh, you see, yeah, brilliant, and it still hasn't happened. It's cruel life being an actor. But what was I talking? I'm still skirting around the issue of the Doctor snogging people. I think it's just because you have it everywhere else, and I love the Doctor and Rose dynamic, but that's because it goes unsaid, and I think there's a tragedy in that. But it enables us to play with the idea of a love story if we want one, but because it's not sort of consummated, as it were, for those of us that don't want Doctor Who to be about love and kissing. But with the current see lots of internet chat of people so excited about the Doctor and Yasmin, and why would I want to take away their enjoyment of that? And that speaks on many levels as well about representation that's been lacking in television for so many years and all that sort of thing. Why would I why would I want to deny anyone their enjoyment of that when it actually doesn't take away from Doctor Who being a fun, rollicking science fiction adventure? So it's interesting. I as I say, I'm just running through my DNA as an aversion to hanky panky and the TARDIS, and yet when I watched this episode, or when I digested this episode, I absolutely loved it. And I think again it's partially because they never get to do it. This is Ellen Thomas, but it's not Ellen Thomas as some guidebooks would have you suggest, because I think her name is spelt wrong in the credits. She's Ellen with one L. She's not Ellen Thomas, the EastEnders and Planet of the Dead actress. I mean, look at her. You can tell it's not. She's a different shape. But people don't do that when they just... Anyway, let's not get into poor research. But Ellen is a Welsh actress and dancer. I think she's a dancer. She's actually a friend of mine on Facebook, although I don't think we've met. And I realised that I knew she wasn't that Ellen Thomas, because it's obvious she's not that Ellen Thomas. But I wondered why there was another Ellen Thomas, because Equity doesn't allow two actors to have the same name. But then she was in one of the live shows and was credited at the end of that with the one L. And I went, okay, that's why. So if you read any book that says Ellen Thomas's other credits include EastEnders, they've got the wrong one. And the voice is Emily Joyce, who's a fine actress, who was brilliant in A Cracker as a Murderer, but she was the wife in My Hero. She's had a very good career, very fine actress, and pops in and just does the voice of the robot. But we've had quite a few very fine actors just coming in to do a voice, because it's easily done these days, even more easily done these days than then. But this is great, and I love all the bit about Madame de Pompadour, saying answer any and all questions, and we're the same, and this great mystery. I really like Sophia Myles. I remember a friend of mine at the time saying, "Oh, she's too wooden, she hasn't got it," which I don't buy at all. I think she's got the deportment of somebody at court, and I think she. And that sort of formal way that she speaks actually emphasises her love for the Doctor in a way that you can't they can't articulate it as we would articulate love these days, which again gives a slight distance, but also a slight sense of sort of loss and detachment of that bond, if that makes a weird sort of sense. Oh, great! Yes, great. So that's like a mid-episode cliffhanger. Very good. So they've gone off to do their bit, and I really love this scene. See, I think this is why, still smarting from the kiss, maybe when they did this, you go, oh, this is. I love the intimacy of this. I mean, again, it's nonsense. It's like Vulcan death grip, but this is, Vulcan mind meld or whatever. And I mean, it's nonsense in the sense of in real life, in nonsense, it works perfectly fine in Doctor Who. And yet, despite the fact that we've got somebody here going into somebody else's mind, and I'm not a great fan of telepathy either. I think it's a bit of a cop-out. And yet, under the right circumstances, and these are absolutely the right circumstances, absolutely works. And then the fact that she turns it on him, lonely childhood, you see, so you're suddenly going, no, Toby, this isn't kissing and therefore not speaking to you about Doctor Who. This is speaking about lonely little boys and and then suddenly it's all about me. So I think it's very clever, and it's perhaps braver and bolder than I would have been if I'd been handed the task of writing a Doctor Who script, having been a Doctor Who fan all my life, which is why, you know, Moffat is such an excellent writer and great purveyor of Doctor Who, and I love a Doctor Who, but I particularly love that Doctor Who. I love it when they do a Doctor Who joke. I love Lady Painfort's Doctor Who, but I really like that Doctor Who, and I love this. See, this is better to me than a consummation of a sexual connection, or anything like that. That the intimacy of that moment of him entering her mind, but then her also then seeing into his soul, is a you know, it's a genuine intimacy, but creative out of science fiction nonsense. But it's so truthful, and it works as a concept. I adore that scene, and I think she does it well. And he's faultless. He's such a good actor. And this gives Rosa. I feel a bit sorry for Mickey. You know, he has to be a bit hopeless to emphasise how good Rose is, and Billy Piper's very good at doing what I always think of when I think of Barry Letts describing Elizabeth Sladen's audition, where he said lots of actresses came in were brave, and lots of actresses came in and were scared. She was the one that did brave whilst scared, and she was like that with Billy Piper was just like that with the Clockwork thing when it got its Stanley knife out. You know, she was brave, but obviously scared. See, I wasn't even comfortable with the Doctor being drunk. He's much more sort of boyish and playful with the Doctor, Stephen Moffat, at this time than I think I was comfortable with. But I don't know if that's not my fault. Why do I want the Doctor to be slightly aloof from me? Why do I not want him to do the things or desire the things of getting pissed and kissing girls? Why do I think the Doctor should be a step back from that? I don't know. As I say, it's because then when all of these things happened, you know, it didn't destroy Doctor Who for me. So, but I have to acknowledge the fact that I had a very uneasy relationship with that sort of thing, and I don't really think about it now unless I come to watch these episodes again. But of course, the Doctor is buying time here to get a bit of plot knowledge out whilst pretending to be drunk. So there we go, Toby. Get over yourself. He was pretending all of the time, and actually a completely logical way for the Doctor to behave, because the Doctor always makes his enemies underestimate him, and who do you underestimate more than somebody that's a bit pissed? And that's what he was doing there. But there's just part of me going, why have you made? I don't know. And I'm only, you know, I'm being honest about a lot of things that I've not thought about since I probably first watched this episode. But I'm trying to convey that terrible. I still think there's in the DNA of a Doctor Who fan of my age is still always a worry that things won't be just so and just right. I mean, that's my mind as well, partially, is I think I think things need to be just right. But it's more the worry that they're not than anything that actually happens that caused me the distress. So actually, the distress is only in my own stupid head. And this time they're bringing back a head. This is great. This is built up really, really beautifully. It's had some great comic moments. I think it's got brilliant monsters. It's very touching. And I think it's lovely that we get a scene between Rose and Madame de Pompadour. I think this is a good dramatic choice to send Rose in so that the two of them have a moment. I think it would have been very tempting to get the Doctor to come in. And there's that beautiful line, isn't there, that the Doctor is worth the monsters. And that's, and that's what we have. We sort of like being scared. That's what draws us to Doctor Who. What is that weird thing of enjoying being scared? And that's why the Doctor's such an interesting figure, because as I mentioned earlier, the Doctor defeats the monsters, but if we weren't watching a show with the Doctor in it, we wouldn't be watching the monsters. So the Doctor, cures us of an ill that the Doctor infected us with. And I like the fact that this doesn't patronise Madame de Pompadour. And I didn't really know anything about her. So also there's that great thing about being a history lesson. But I love what it says about her being a remarkable person. I'm always wary of patronising the past because they don't have microwave ovens or the Guardian or whatever. And I think the fact that it shows her to be intelligent and resourceful and intuitive and sharp, the monsters and the Doctor. We can't have one without the other. Isn't that the lesson for life, isn't it? It's the two sides of the same coin. Happiness and sadness, good and evil, and one throws the other into sharp relief. And I think maybe Doctor Who helps us to live with the monsters that life throws at us. I think she's really good. I really do disagree with my friend who wasn't enamoured of her performance. And it's brilliant, these portraits. It's really clever the way that and she gets to see, and this is quite moving because there's something about the fact that she spends time, she actually touches not the alien sands but the spaceship corridor. It's not quite the same, but it's a bit sad actually that all she sees of space and time is a knackered corridor. But this is very well done because it needs to not have the Doctor in it, this scene, to actually give her I think this is great because we've seen her as so capable, but this is terrifying for her, and actually there's a real tragedy of having to. And I love the way that it's articulated. The slow path, is that she lives her life between whole swathes of life between these moments. The Doctor is worth the monsters. This story makes me very emotional, and yet it's it's entirely framed in a construct of nonsense. Doctor Who is nonsense, and yet capable of being quite sort of profound and moving, and I think all of the emotion and the profundity is framed brilliantly in a story that makes absolute sense. And time travel, I can see why Stephen Moffat is drawn to the time travel elements of Doctor Who, because there is something terribly moving about. I mean, I've in the past couple of days, I've looked at a story that I think of as quite recent, and I was 15 then, and I'm 48 now, so it's not that recent. But even and this, I think of as terribly recent. It's new Doctor Who, and yet this is 2007. So this is 15 years ago. There are 15-year-olds who were born when this was on. We don't have a truck. And that's and what we thought was the horse, which is comic relief, which is great comic relief. And I do like the music with the plonky plonky music with the horse. It does just seem to work. And we are French. I like that. I like the way she does that. Yeah. And its production design is beautiful. I think those costumes and those masks are extraordinary, and I love the way they move. And she's really well drawn, and I love the fact that she gets these sort of hero moments, which do not require feet. That's very funny. And of course, I'm sort of thinking now, they can't kill her because she's from history, but something's got to happen because we know that the Doctor's not going to end up with her because it's Doctor Who. She's great. But this whole thing was. I wonder what they would have done. So will yours. I wonder what they would have done if they hadn't been able to do this, because I'm sure I remember there was a time when they didn't think they were going to be able to do this stunt. And if you look really closely at it now, I think. I think you can sort of. It's one of the few effects I think that is slightly probably dated. I think maybe kids brought up on television today might look at that a bit like we look at sort of mid-80s CSO. I don't know, but it's a brilliant moment, and I like the little wink that he does, and it's. This is my love of the King of France. And I do quite like the fact that the Doctor... Again, it's not really my image of what the Doctor should be like. Sort of slightly defensive and sort of willy-wangling with the King of France. But I do quite like it. But that the way the plot builds and all the pieces are in place to have, one, the Doctor do the heroic thing of smashing through the mirror on the horse that we have seen seeded earlier as what we thought was comic relief, goes through the mirror on us, but also the fact that the mirror seals behind him is a great confluence of all of the plot elements, all of the character elements, and it gets us to the climax where we defeat the monster, but it adds another piece of jeopardy, and how we're going to get out of this is that the Doctor is there trapped. So it's brilliant, layer upon layer upon layer of storytelling, a very carefully placed and planned storytelling. And I'm not winding you up is an absolutely brilliant line. I mean, I think he's so good at piecing together Doctor Who stories thematically and in terms of plot and character. This is such a good story, and you know, the Doctor's air of melancholy continues because he's ended up here and he's ended up with her and he saved her, but he's cut off from Rose and Mickey and the TARDIS and crucially us, and you're going, well, we know that he can't. How's he going to get out of this? And there's a real sense of... And it sort of takes you back to old Doctor Who. You know, I've watched a lot of 60s stuff recently, and that the idea that, you know, separation from the TARDIS was as much as part of the adventure as anything else. And that, you know, forget monsters and adventure and bad guys. If suddenly the TARDIS is taken away from you, you are stuck. And that you know, that could be often the sort of thrust of what a story might be about. And I like these bits of music. The little sort of, it's like the Madame de Pompadour theme is like a sort of little child's music box, isn't it? Which takes you back to her childhood bedroom. It's very clever and very evocative and very sweet. Broken mirrors and torn tapestries. Yeah, that's very cleverly explained, I think. I'll pay for any damage. I like the way he does that. Yes, and suddenly the fact that the greatest threat to the Doctor now is actually that he doesn't actually know how to do anything and can't do anything, stuck on the slow path. Oh, he's so charming, isn't he? He's such a great Doctor. But even this. Oh, this is so sad because I get really upset by this. I'd forgotten I get upset. I think she's really excellent the way that she. I think I would have enjoyed the slow path. Oh, that's so sad. People doing the right thing, even though it's the worst thing for them, I find terribly moving. And and again, this all makes absolute sense. It's the original Fireplace. So she instinctively knows, therefore, that will get him back to the spaceship. And I think it's the only bit now that doesn't quite, although David Tennant I think sells it brilliantly, is that in his keenness to get back, it's only as he's sort of zipping around that he realizes, oh my God, what if I won't see her again? Which, as it turns out, he won't. You sort of go, it's a slight brain fug from the Doctor when he does this, because she kind of knows, because she said, I would like the slow path. She knows. And that's always sadder when you know, isn't it, for some reason. But I suppose actually this is not as... Oh, that look on his face. He suddenly realised. This isn't as actually as... Oh, he does look on his face, but now he's still happy. So he hasn't realised. Interesting. So what's that look all about? No, because he still thinks he's going back. I don't know, but actually his zeal to make sure the connection worked, I think I completely buy. So I didn't. So I didn't think this time round it was as daft as maybe I thought. But then the fact that he still hasn't twigged that when he goes back it's going to be a different time. Yeah, it's maybe the only bit that doesn't quite, because the plots of these, everything is such a clever jigsaw. That's the only bit that I think I query. But it's important because it buys you this great heart-wrenching thing of him seeing her beautiful and vibrant and alive and young and emotional, and he zips round the corner in his fireplace, and when he zips back she's gone. And I think it's sad for the king as well. It's a nice moment for this relatively minor character, and it's desperately sad for him. And the doctor doesn't give him any comfort either. The doctor actually claims the moment, and doesn't say, "Yeah, I'm sorry, mate," and she was your lover, whereas I just snogged her at the disco. And the fact that he doesn't get to say goodbye, and the fact that he misses her because of how time works. But yeah, he doesn't show him. That's very that's the, and it's harsh, but it also just shows how hurt he is. But it's nice that it gives Ben Turner the moment as the king as well. He's the one in focus, and yeah, that's really nice. It's really beautifully done. Oh dear. And we don't know the answer. We don't know the answer. Probably, yeah. That, and this is really clever that they go away without the answer, and we do have the answer in the final shot, which explains it all. And it's just that the ship has got the same name. I'm always all right. Oh God, I think that's so sad. Oh, I'm a wreck tonight. And I'm not one that particularly seeks my Doctor Who to be soppy. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I am. I'd be perfectly happy with a Doctor Who that has no soppy moments in it at all. Although I get quite emotional when people mortally wounded and say, "Leave me, I'll save yourselves," or somebody stays behind to blow up a spaceship. That's all I need to get me a little bit going. But I don't find this manipulative. I don't find it mawkish. I don't find it sentimental. I know I do have friends who quite resist a lot of the emotional content of more modern Doctor Who, and I don't know why. I think it's not only legitimate. I think it's important that television is much more in tune now. I think with you watch any television from the sort of 70s and 80s, the leaving of regulars is sometimes really sort of botched and tagged onto the end. Not just talking Doctor Who now. There's lots of stuff that doesn't quite have the sense of occasion that telly does now, and I don't quite know why. And there are exceptions, of course, and I'm not slagging off old telly. I love old telly. It's my meat and drink, but I think our grasp. I think, television does seem to have a bit more of an emotional thrust to its characterizations, and I as I say, I do have friends who I know sort of resist that, and I can sort of see where they're coming from. I'm glad I'm not though. I'm glad I'm not so entrenched in the way that everything was done in the old days that's too much of a shock, so that even the kiss I end up kind of living with, even though the drunkenness, although it's not drunkenness, I kind of don't mind. Or so many things that I thought would be against my view of what Doctor Who was actually turn out not to be problematic, and that the problems were all in my head, in what I thought they might do rather than in what they actually were. And of course this was terribly exciting to see the Cybermen come back, of course, because the Cybermen had not been back. So this in of itself was like, oh my God, we're gonna see the Cybermen, which we don't fully see in that next time trailer. But what a great final shot, that the Madame de Pompadour. It was the name of the ship, and I think that's the sort of thing that a sort of non-science fiction person might go, well, don't know what that means. It was very simple. They thought they were the same as her because the ship was named after. And I haven't even mentioned because I mentioned the setup of the eye, but the fact that the spaceship is. The fact it smells of Sunday roast is because it's got bits of people making up the spaceship. And that's just an incidental part of the story. But it's great sort of plot set dressing that is all is the story we don't see. The person whose eye that was and heart that was, the crew, that they've got a whole other story to tell, but their story is over. But they add to the grimness of the scenario. We're only left to imagine. So it's brilliant. I think it's so on point in so many areas. So what are my 5 things? Oh, well, I love the mind meld scene, or for whatever we call it, for the reasons that there's a beautiful intimacy there, made out of science fiction nonsense. And it makes it makes it real, and it makes it very emotional, and that connection with them I totally buy, that she's been in his head and he's been in hers, and the fact that she says Doctor Who in it too. I love the the Clockwork Robots. I think they're absolutely fantastic. I love the. I mean, is it enough to say this? I mean, there's so much. It's difficult to sort of boil things down to a sort of constituent part, but I love the horse. The horse on a spaceship to me is very Doctor Who. There's a horse on a spaceship, but then the fact that is seeded in at that point, and he's plodding along to the plinky plonky music, and becomes the climax. Well, the climax of certainly the Clockwork Robot part of the story. There's then that beautiful coda. So I love the horse. I love the tragedy. I love the relationship between the Doctor and Madame de Pompadour, and the fact that they have this great intimacy without it ever becoming sex. As far as I'm concerned, I suppose you could have a missing adventure if you wanted one in between, where he disappears with her and comes back apparently drunk. You can write your fanfic in the boudoir, but for me, that's not what went on. And so it does that very clever thing of the Doctor having a very intimate relationship with somebody else that doesn't bother us with any of the sort of I was going to say physical ickiness, but that makes me sound like some sort of chaste prude, and I'm not those things. I just don't want the Doctor having sex. Sorry. And this gives me that cake and eats it. Is that it has that? It tells a really emotional story that you totally buy. That has that very sad ending, and that is due to the dynamic between the Doctor and Madame de Pompadour, and I think Sophia Myles is a great part of that. She's important to that carrying off. And actually, so I was going to say the jokes. Moffat's script writing is so witty. But actually, I think this time, what really spoke to me was actually the fact that she got a scene with Rose and got to touch the future. I found that rather moving, and I liked the fact that a bit of the story was given over to the two women just having a moment, and the Doctor is worth the monsters. Oh, but I also like the monster under the bed. The fact that it ties in with childhood as well. So hang on. I've gone for the scene with the mind meld. Yeah. Because I feel like I'm doing a lot of Madame de Pompadour stuff here. I've gone for the Clockwork Robots, which I think are great. Because they're, period costume, beautifully designed, outside and inside. They're very elegant, but they're also very scary. They're a great Doctor Who monster. The love story, as it were. I mean, it's as simple just as that. Yeah, the time-travelling love story. And as I say, I'm not always a great fan of timey-wimey shenanigans, but it works perfectly there. I think it works perfectly. But as I say, apart from that final moment where the Doctor doesn't realise the consequences of what he's done. But I think it buys that because of. I think we allow it because of what it buys us. And I said the horse. Yeah, not just because it's funny having a horse on a spaceship, but because of the way it builds up. So then the final thing, is it the scene with Rose and Madame de Pompadour, or is it the fact that he so cleverly weaves it into our child? Well, I've already had the mind meld and the sort of love story, so I suppose I can't have everything. I can't just keep saying Madame de Pompadour, even though I like to think that, in mentioning her twice, I'm sort of giving Sophia Myles her due as well. So I love that scene with Rose and her. But I think I have to give the dues to what I think Moffat does very cleverly, which is to tap into the fact that we largely, or maybe I'm just being personal, I came to Doctor Who as a kid in my bedroom. It's where I thought about Doctor Who a lot. And I was scared of monsters under the bed. I was scared of things rattling outside. And that he so often, that's a thing that he does, is he so cleverly winds his Doctor Who storytelling in with how a great many of us first encountered that storytelling, which means you get sort of double the value out of it. So I think Monsters Under the Bed would perhaps be my final thing. I mean, I don't know why I spend so much time on these. I never win. I never get anywhere close. So let's see what Kathryn has to say.
I think so. My favourite things, which I have to nominate apparently, because that's the whole premise of this podcast, is favourite thing number 1, suit and Converse. I mean, they mocked us at school for wearing trainers. They punished us at school for wearing trainers with formal wear. Lily Allen was very much a trailblazer in that regard, wearing, trainers with a lovely dress. So was old David T. In his, I mean, I don't think he got to choose his costumes, but let's say it's him. Because if you had to describe the outfit, brown pinstripe suit and trainers that fall apart at the hint of a puddle, it sounds
beep,
doesn't it? It sounds really
beep,
and yet he manages to carry it off, a look which we were all doing then. So yeah, big fan of
that. That's fun because I actually. It's funny because I knew I'd seen Converse around, but I didn't actually own any Converse. And of course, then I did get some Converse. I mean, I was a grown man and I bought the clothes that the hero of a children's television program wears. Oh, dear. Now, Kathryn, I can understand, because terrifyingly, she just said she was at school. Oh God, this is somebody I work with. Do you know what I mean? I work with people who must consider me to be an ancient and nearly dead person. David Tennant did get to I think had a big say in his costume, and I remember he described it as geek chic. I think was it him that described it as that, which I think is a great descriptor. But and Converse trainers are fun, but actually they're not very comfortable. They're quite pinchy, and I wore them, I think, when I was on the road with Must Take My Doctor Who scarf a lot. I ended up actually getting quite sore feet, so I think I would now wear Converse to break up a suit, which, yes, indeed I have. And I even wore I wore tartan pimp soles at my wedding day to break up the wedding suit. So yeah, I mean, I didn't choose that because, of course, it's a thing in every story, but it's a legitimate choice of Kathryn. But I'm also terrified that it's because it evoked her school days.
Second favourite thing about that episode, gotta be the clockwork
beep,
and it, them steampunky bastards. I think they're great. Because of all the outfits that you could wear. I mean, those were, those dresses with the big old hips smashing, really great. I mean, they are scary, very scary with the little, clockwork head things. But I would say that, like, a Venetian mask, right, so the characters act like that just fits in fine. I am going to call bullshit on that. I don't think, like, you would notice, wouldn't you, someone just wearing, like, that mask all the time. You'd be like, can you take it off, please? If you're not allowed to wear a hat inside, if that's bad form, then certainly wearing a full face mask all the time. I mean, maybe not now, masks are actually seen as a good thing at the minute, but, then it's a bit weird. But I mean, still, I like their style. I'm not knocking it. Big fan. I wouldn't have nominated it, would I, if I didn't like it.
Kathryn let through the S word in her first choice. I thought I'll probably let that go. I tend to try not to swear on these podcasts. That dates back to my show Moths Ate My Doctor Who Scarf, when taking any swearing out, because I swear like a trooper in my stand-up, just made the show come alive, because it would have seemed so wrong, effing and blinding, as I did in early iterations of the show, about something that goes back to my childhood. So I try not to swear on these, or just because I think it's a good default position to have. But she said the S word, and I thought, well, that's fine. She's just called the robots clockwork. I will have bleeped out, and part of the reason I'm probably saying this out loud now is to remind myself when I'm editing it, just bear in mind what she called the clockwork robots and bleep it out. So I might have just let the S word go, but now I think I'm going to be delving into this episode and bleeping out quite a lot of Kathryn's contribution. I'm not sure I buy her criticism of the face masks, because it's not like they're blending in in order to be doing an act of subterfuge. They sort of fit in with the surroundings in order to fit in with the surroundings, but I don't think they're trying to kid anyone that they're actually people, because they make their intents known fairly quickly. And he says, there are creatures. But anyway, I was amused. I was amused by Kathryn's dissection of that, and also pleased because she chose something that I have chosen. So actually, 2 choices in, and it's 1-1. This victory will not last. It's not a victory. This draw, even a draw, is a temporary victory for me. What's number 3, which will be something I haven't chosen?
I think, as a teenager, certainly, this is my 3rd favourite thing. As a teenager, that kissy scene with Madame de Pamplemousse, I mean, what a day that was, because I'll be honest, the reason I got into Doctor Who was I had a crush on David Tennant. So, that it brought in all of my favourite things. That and also, I mean, it was a weird situation all round, I suppose, for her, wasn't it? Some weird guy appears behind a fire when you're a kid and just kills a clockwork man what's hiding under your bed. I hope I'm not spoiling it. I hope you've had time to see the episode, I think. So it's very much on you now, actually, if you're listening and watching. Anyway, yeah, I was a big fan of that as a teenager. I mean, I liked the episode anyway. It wasn't all based just on that one incident, but certainly it helped. And she got limited chances. So just go straight in with a kiss, I suppose. If he doesn't hang around much, does he? He's there when you need him, the Doctor, and he never, everything's got to sort of be on fire and dying, and then he'll turn up. So, I get why she was so forward, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
And I think that proves the point that I was making, whereas I, as a whatever I am, whatever I was then, I was grown up then. What was I? I was 2000 and well, hang on, it's 15 years ago, so I was 30, 32, 33. May have been resistant due to programming of the idea of the Doctor kissing anyone, and it's exactly the kind of thing that brought in an audience like Kathryn, that has made Doctor Who, relevant and interesting, and its fan base broader, and its appeal more universal, and its storytelling ambition of the right kind of scope for a 21st century audience and the ambitions of 21st century program makers. So, of course, that's brilliant because again, none of those things ultimately harmed my love of the program, yet they introduced a new sort of dynamic or whatever into it that was exactly the sort of thing that people like Kathryn, of her age when she was a schoolgirl, it was their gateway into the show, or certainly the thing that, one of the things that kept them there. And I think there's a lesson in all of that. If something, if I'm not quite sure about something, Doctor Who will always still shine through for me. And if there's an element introduced that I'm not sure about, well, if it's being done properly by a good writer and doesn't lose sight of the fact that Doctor Who has to be a cheerful, fun science fiction adventure that's funny and scary and imaginative and clever all at once, whatever else it does, it might be doing for very good reason, and might have be of great benefit to the show. And also, again, why? Because I'm a bit of a stuffy old geezer, worrying about that sort of thing. Should that then be denied that audience who've then, brought so much to Doctor Who in terms of support, and they will be the people that are creative and nurture it through all its future manifestations. It's exactly how it should be. And as I say, I don't actually mind the kiss now. Look at me being so grand. I don't mind. You can have the kiss. As I say, it's not necessarily what I look for in Doctor Who, but he balances it well enough that you can sort of say, well, they kissed, but she kissed him, and his response is quite sort of childlike, and it's not, I snogged Madame de Pompadour. It's not a confident teenager doing that, is it? Or it is a teenager doing it, not a grown person. So therefore, that makes it slightly more chaste, and therefore it's not sexy, and that's what I want. Not sexy is what I want. Give me not sexy. Give me a best not sexy, please, Doctor Who. And yet, it's, as I say, it's totally what Kathryn wanted when she was very much the sort of target audience that Doctor Who needed to be bringing along with it. And I would have watched anyway, and I did, and I loved it. So perfect.
My fourth favourite thing, I would say, Horse on a Spaceship. Classic Who. And it, why was it there? Dunno. Arthur, I think he was called. Good lad. Why was he wearing a saddle? It was helpful that he was. I don't think he was big enough to smash through a solid mirror. He did, didn't he? Good lad. Unscathed as well, actually. So that was, good on him. Good on him for getting through that amount of glass with barely a scratch on him. And, I suppose, houses amongst the rich then were big enough to accommodate a horse. Because I think if a horse smashed through the mirror in my house, we would have a job getting that horse out of here. So I suppose it was lucky, really, that they were existing in that time. Because, imagine trying to get a horse out of a flat in Kilburn. You wouldn't get it down the stairs. It'd be like that scene in Friends, wouldn't it, where they're trying to pivot the sofa. But yeah, I'm glad he was there, and I hope that he lived a happy life afterwards. And he got ridden to his heart's content.
Oh, well, this is exciting for me. Anyway, it's 2-2. I'm on the cusp of victory. This rarely happens. In fact, it's happened once. Didn't I? I won with Love and Monsters. I've been on the cusp a few times, then blown it. I still rankle that I didn't win with Jim Sangster on the Caveman episodes, when I should have chosen the regulars. Of course I should have done it. It's the first story, and they're so great in it, and I chose something else. I think I chose something ridiculous as well, like the contrast or something. The font. The font on the VHS. So, still chosen 3 things. So what is it? It's the love story. It's a bit sort of tenuous, that though, isn't it? The Doctor Who scene, the mind meld scene, and the childhood nightmares. If she now chooses the scene between Madame de Pompadour and Rose, I'm going to smash everything in this house to pieces. There we go. So I won't overreact.
And finally, I think my 5th favourite thing, it's got to be a fire extinguisher gun, hasn't it? Oh, yeah. You know, because guns are cool. I know they're bad. I know they kill people. But they're cool, aren't they? And fire extinguishers, they're not cool. And I just think that I would have listened a hell of a lot more in all fire safety training if it was like, here's the fire extinguisher gun. I'd be like, yes, please, more of this. And it stopped the clockwork
Beep
as well, briefly, but enough. It looks cool. What's not to love? Can I have one, please? And thus ends my nominations. Big fan of that episode. Big fan of all of it.
Toby of the future, there was another C word there. Edit that out. And Kathryn, I think, has been much more light-hearted in her approach to me. So fun, so interestingly that all the sort of love story stuff, the intimate stuff that I bought into as the sort of becardiganed old guy, Kathryn instead went for the fire extinguisher gun. So near and yet so far defeated by a prop. But there we go. But it's been fascinating to get Kathryn's take on that. Gosh, so she was at school whilst I was a man with 2 children when that was on. Dear, just it was just prior. Yeah, it was prior to me doing Moth Sate My Doctor Who Scarf. In fact, I wrote Moth Sate My Doctor Who Scarf in the shadow of this series of Doctor Who. Funnily enough. Anyway, Kathryn's going to tell you about herself. She's a great comic. I've worked with her a few times. I can't remember how we got onto the fact that she was a Doctor Who fan. She might have mentioned it on stage. But anyway, we got chatting. And I said, well, please do my podcast, which she did. And so if you don't know Kathryn Mather, the comedian, this is what she's about.
If you want to find me, please don't come to my house. But I do have stuff online. I do my own podcast. It's called 0 Hours Podcast. You can find me on iTunes or on Twitter at podcast_hours. Some other podcast called 0 Hours took 0 hours, the bastards. Yeah, I interview comedians about the best and worst jobs that they've had to do whilst trying to pursue comedy. I am on social media as a standalone individual. I'm at Kathmath Comedy on Twitter, and I have my own website too. It's kathrynmather.com. And I also do some videos with fellow comedian called Sean Patrick. It's called 2 Mins of Pat and Mav, where we just ask silly questions and give silly answers, and we release those like twice a week. It's an awful lot, actually, but I mean, there are an infinite number of questions in the world, aren't there? And we'll find them all. We will find all of the questions and give ridiculous answers to them. And I built a TARDIS too, which I think is why Toby asked me to do this podcast. So I did videos, they're on my website if you want to see, about how to build a half-sized TARDIS. But thank you for having me, Toby. It's been a pleasure, as always. Au revoir.
Thanks, Kathryn. So check out all of those things that she plugged there. And I think it's great that the appeal of Doctor Who has sort of spread far and wide. It was true that what is it? Clive's wife says she's a girl and she's interested in the Doctor. That the pool of people to whom Doctor Who appeals is a much wider one now, and that is to its benefit and to our benefit. Even if we think we won't like the things that happen as a result. And that's just because, well, fear makes fools of us all. And as I say, I'm not calling anybody out on this. I'm addressing my own. I'm just trying to be honest about my own any misgivings that I have. And I'm always full of misgivings. I'm always worried Doctor Who's going to be awful, and that everyone will hate it, or worse, that everyone will like it, but it won't be what I deem to be Doctor Who. And actually, it always ends up being Doctor Who, really. You could say, I know there are some people that don't think things like The Seeds of Doom is Doctor Who, and it's one of my favourite stories. But I can understand their argument. Go, actually, there are certain things that happen that are more like the Avengers than Doctor Who. It's not really Doctor Who. I know there are some people who might say that Inferno is not, proper Doctor Who in the way that slightly more fantastical. And I love Inferno. So if you're inclined to not like something, you could sort of say, and there's lots of things you could say aren't Doctor Who. But I think my main, concerns are always, I don't know. I suppose there are certain things that, I would hold sacred, and the hanky-panky element is one of them. But it's never quite gone that far. As I record now, there's still time for, as I record this, the 13th Doctor and Yaz to get right down to it. So who knows? But if they do, the world will keep on turning. But actually, in that story, I think it has its cake and eats it. In that it has all the benefits that of the sort of love story that so pleased teenage Kathryn and so worried grown up Toby, and yet it has enough of not having them in that. They don't go to bed together and blah, 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 that it satisfies whatever my prejudices or concerns about that are. So I think it's clever and I think it's playful, but most of all, it's a terribly moving, very funny, expertly thought out and rendered piece of Doctor Who. It's not what I imagine Doctor Who could or should be. It's not a particularly traditional Doctor Who story, and yet it does things that you can only do in Doctor Who, and it does things that I think only Stephen Moffat can do in Doctor Who, and does them so very, very well. And as I say, a culmination of 3 stories in a row: Tooth and Claw, School Reunion, Girl in the Fireplace, all very different, but I think all excellent examples of Doctor Who, and as good a run in the show's as has been in the show. I think I might go Robots of Death, Talons, and Horror of Fang Rock as another, but there's a season break, isn't there? As another 3 10s in a row. I don't know if there are many. I don't know if there's another. Don't know if there's another occasion. Anyway, God, that was quite long. Oh God, it's nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. I've spoken for a long time. I'm very sorry to have taken you along the slow path, but thank you very much for spending your time in front of the fireplace with me. What a brilliant piece of Doctor Who. Thanks to Kathryn Mather, my guest. Thanks to you for listening. Happy times and places to you all. Goodbye. Thanks ever so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is always, I'm afraid, presented by me, Toby Hadoke. My special guest on this occasion was Kathryn Mather, who can be found on Twitter at KathMathComedy. KathMathComedy. She is not the only person to whom I am grateful. There are patrons who make these podcasts possible. And they include Len Stewart, Neil Tate, Nick Temple, Sabrina Tirabassi, Reynard Toombs, Apollo C. Vermouth, Gary Wales, Adam Westwood, Rich Wiggins, Michael Williams, Andrew Willis, Andrew Wilson, Stephen White, Adam Parker, James Bell, Lee Wakeley, Drew, Stephen Smith, aka Dalek Fan, Fraser Gregory, Risto Mitty Sarillo, Peter Blackett, Andy Parkinson, and Joel Aarons. The music is by Dave Gates and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. Well, don't take the slow path to listen to these. If you're listening to this and you are not a patron, which you can be, by the way, at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, you are listening to this, I should think, 6 months after the people who listen to this as patrons, because they are 6 months in advance of Happy Times and Places. Oh, what have they listened to that you lot haven't yet? I don't actually know because I haven't recorded them, but I think there's, Gavin Rymil on Silver Nemesis, Chris Cassell on The Five Doctors, Steve O'Brien on Boomtown, Full Circle writer Andrew Smith on The Dominators. They'll all have been listened to by patrons whilst you are toiling away in the past, probably listening to, Isambard Kingdom Brunel talking about Terry and June. That's how long ago you're loitering in time and space. But anyway, if you would like to become a patron, please do. It's £3 a month, gets you access to most things. There are various trinkets that sort of lure you higher up the ladder, but most things are available at the lowest tier, because I don't like the idea of withholding anything. So £3 a month, and you also get 10% off any tier if you sign up for a year in one go. That's at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. There's bonus material, there's special access, all sorts of other bits and bobs, and you get your name mentioned in the credits. If you do not fancy signing up or committing to a monthly thing, I understand that, you can go to ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke, and if you think I sound needy or hungry or just in need of a bit of a boost of some kind, up the chocolate bar or metaphorical, I've used that joke before, sorry, then please do. But I know times are tough, I really do, and I'm very grateful to you for listening to these. And if you want to do something to help that costs you nothing, you can go to iTunes or to wherever you get your podcasts and give these a 5-star rating and perhaps a few nice lines of review to give passing punters a flavour of what these are all about, and perhaps, lure them into the Hadoke sphere. And any kind words you can put out there on social media really help as well. These have their own committed Twitter stream at Hadoke Podcasts, and I am also on separately at Toby Hadoke, where I don't just talk about the podcasts, I talk inanely about other things as well. Talking of talking inanely, that's what I actually do for a living. I'm a stand-up comedian. I run a comedy club called Excess Malarkey in Manchester that is on 8 p.m. at the Breadshed every Tuesday. It's been going every Tuesday for the past 24 years. We hit 25 in September. But there was a pandemic, so we couldn't be live in the flesh, so we were live online. And we set up a comedy channel on twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey that we still broadcast from on the first Sunday of every month at 8 p.m. GMT, and also there has an archive of the various bits and bobs of shows that we did during the pandemic, when we continued our weekly quest to at least put a smile on some people's faces. So, Kathryn, I had to bleep out there. I said it's an interesting one, that, isn't it? I'll tell you where all this comes from. When I did my show, Moths Ate My Doctor Who Scarf, I did as much swearing as anybody else. I might have mentioned this in the podcast, but I've been mulling this over, because I am no prude. I've got a filthy tongue. I swear more than I would like. It's a disappointment to me that I effing blind and drop the C-bomb and all sorts in every day, just when I'm talking about, cooking or fish, but for some reason I don't know, I feel just in a way that also in the way that I sort of feel about Doctor Who and Nookie, in a way, when you can't do the things that a lot of things do. So when you can't fall back on love stories, or you can't fall back on swearing as a form of expression, I think you have to be sometimes more interesting. But there's also an element of do as I say, not as I do, in that, I don't actually like, swearing in front of kids, although I've very often sworn in front of my own. So it's all hypocrisy. Manners are basically they're basically a lie, aren't they? They're sort of saying, under certain circumstances, don't do what you would ordinarily do in order to maintain that you are more civilized and have more decorum than you actually have. That's terrible, isn't it? That's terrible. It's all a sham, and yet nonetheless, it's a sham I shall try to maintain, because the truth is one thing, but standards are quite another. And if you don't like it, you can off.